It was a bright sunny afternoon when I found myself wandering by the creek thinking about how my days felt like they were blending into each other with no purpose or excitement. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how a single moment would change me and my perspective on life. The scent of wildflowers drifted through the crisp air as I walked on the path lined with tall grass. I often came here to clear my mind, but today my thoughts were clouded heavier than usual with a quiet restlessness that I couldn't shake. I had been struggling with self-doubt, feeling as though I was just going through the motions. As I continued along the path, something unusual caught my eye. In a pasture by the creek, a beautiful chestnut horse stood grazing alone, its coat shone in the sun, and its strong presence somehow calmed me. I'd always admired horses, but I'd never been so close to one before, and I found myself drawn toward it almost without realizing. The horse lifted its head as I approached, and for a moment we looked at each other. I felt a sense of connection in that gaze. It was almost as if the horse could sense my need for peace. Without hesitation, I climbed over the fence and walked slowly toward it. The earth soft beneath my feet. I was aware of the animal's power, but its calm presence put me at ease. With a tentative hand, I reached out to touch its coat, feeling the warmth and smoothness beneath my fingers. The horse stood still, allowing my hand to rest on its side, and I felt a sudden surge of joy just being present in that quiet moment. As I stood there, my mind emptied of its usual noise, and I felt a rare sense of clarity and calm. That moment with the horse made me realize how little I paused in life to appreciate the present, how much I had lost touch with myself by being consumed with routine and worry. It reminded me of how important it was to connect with the world around me, to allow myself a chance to breathe and feel alive again. But as I stood there, I felt a spark of something more, a curiosity about what else I had been ignoring or pushing aside. In the busyness of my life, questions began to surface within me, questions about what I truly wanted, about the parts of myself I had forgotten. I felt the gentle thrill of possibility, as if a new door had just opened in my mind. Just as I was beginning to lose myself in these thoughts, I heard my husband Jake calling my name from a distance. His voice pulled me back to reality, and I quickly brushed myself off as I climbed over the fence back onto the path again, feeling slightly self-conscious. As he approached, I realized how hard it was to admit that I felt a need for something more, something undefined that was missing. As Jake reached me with a warm smile on his face, unaware of my inner turmoil, I felt a strange mix of guilt and longing. There was so much I wanted to say, but the words got caught in my throat, so I simply nodded as he asked if I was ready to head home. Together we walked back, but my heart raced with thoughts I couldn't fully understand. I found myself replaying that moment with the horse over and over in my mind, a moment that had been so simple yet had awakened something in me I hadn't felt in years. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake that quiet afternoon. It lingered in my thoughts like an echo, urging me to explore the deeper questions I'd buried for too long. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had been living in a way that felt hollow, like I was filling roles but not truly living. Life was a pattern, and though I loved Jake and our life together, I felt like I was losing myself piece by piece. One evening, as we sat on the couch in comfortable silence, I found myself breaking it with a question that had been on my mind. "Do you ever feel like there's something missing?" I asked hesitantly. Jake looked at me, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean, Sarah?" he asked. I struggled to find the words, feeling a pang of guilt for disrupting the stability we had built together. "It's hard to explain," I said. "I just feel like I'm not really living, like there's more out there that I'm not experiencing." Jake sighed and leaned back, taking in my words. "I thought we were happy," he said quietly, a question and a statement all at once. "Yes, we are happy," I replied, "but happiness isn't everything. Sometimes I want to feel alive, like I'm truly myself, not just playing a part." The words hung in the air between us, and I could sense his uncertainty and hurt, but I couldn't ignore the restlessness within me. Despite the comfort of our shared life, a part of me yearned for something more, something I was just beginning to understand. In the weeks that followed, I found myself searching for ways to reconnect with the parts of me I felt I'd lost. I took up painting, a passion I'd ignored for years, and began to spend more time outside, wandering through nature, taking in the quiet beauty that surrounded me. Each small step toward rediscovery filled me with a sense of excitement and wonder, yet as I began to feel more alive, I noticed a distance growing between Jake and me. He watched me with a mixture of support and confusion, always trying to understand but unable to grasp what was driving these changes. Our once easy conversations began to feel forced. We talked about our days, but the deeper things, the things that mattered most, seemed to hang in the silence between us. I felt a growing tension, something unsaid and heavy, but neither of us knew how to bridge it. One evening, as I was sitting alone on the back porch gazing up at the stars, I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me. I turned to see Jake standing there, his expression unreadable. He asked if he could join me, and I nodded. He sat beside me, our shoulders just barely touching, as we both stared out at the night sky. There was a long silence before he spoke. "Sarah, are you unhappy with our life?" His voice was soft, but there was a hint of sadness in it. I took a deep breath, feeling a wave of emotion that I couldn't quite express. It's not that I'm unhappy, I said slowly. It's more that I feel like I'm missing something, like I need to explore parts of myself that I've been afraid to see. I love you, Jake, I really do, but there's so much inside of me that I don't understand. He nodded, though I could see the pain in his eyes. I could tell he was struggling to accept my words, yet he stayed quiet, not pressing me to explain further. We sat there together for a long time, each lost in our own thoughts, sharing a quiet sadness that felt both comforting and heartbreaking at once. The days after that conversation were marked by an unspoken distance between us. I tried to share more of my journey with Jake, hoping he might understand the changes I was going through, but even as he listened patiently, I could feel the divide growing. We had once been so close, yet now it felt as if we were living in separate worlds that were drifting further apart. Desperate for clarity, I signed up for a weekend retreat alone in a remote cabin surrounded by mountains and endless trails. For 3 days I spent my time in nature, hiking, meditating and journaling, reflecting deeply on my life and the choices that had brought me here. I let myself confront the questions I had been avoiding, facing the parts of myself that I had ignored for so long. One afternoon, as I stood at the edge of a cliff looking out over a valley filled with golden sunlight and swaying trees, I felt a sense of perspective that I hadn't had before. I realized that my journey wasn't about running away from my life or from Jake. It was about understanding who I was at my core, about finding a sense of fulfillment that came from within, not from anything outside. Returning home after that retreat, I felt more certain about what I needed, and I knew I had to be honest with Jake. When I sat down with him, I shared everything I had come to understand. I spoke of my fears, my hopes, and my desire to live a life that felt authentic, a life that honored both my love for him and my need to grow as an individual. Jake listened without interruption, his face softened with understanding, and for the first time I felt like he truly heard me. He took my hands in his and told me that he wanted to support me even if he didn't fully understand what I was going through. We agreed to work together to rebuild our connection, to find ways to honor both of our needs in this journey of self-discovery and love. In the weeks that followed, Jake and I began to reconnect on a deeper level. We made an effort to try new things together, taking up activities that allowed us to see different sides of each other. We shared our dreams and opened up about our fears, letting each other into the parts of ourselves we had kept hidden. It wasn't always easy, and there were still moments of doubt and hurt, but I felt a sense of hope that we were moving towards something real and lasting. Our relationship slowly transformed, no longer defined by routine but by a shared commitment to understanding and growth. We learned to give each other space and freedom while also finding joy in the moments we spent together. Each day became an opportunity to reconnect and appreciate each other in a new way. One evening, as we watched the sunset together on the porch, Jake turned to me with a gentle smile, his eyes filled with warmth and gratitude. "Sarah," he said, "I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you." His words filled me with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time, a peace that came from knowing that I didn't have to choose between self-discovery and love.